the shattering of a soldier's world. The road to war was a complicated one for young Adolf Hitler. Born in Austria in 1889, he had always been a bit of an outsider. A quiet, intense child with a deep fascination for German nationalism, Hitler struggled to find his place. He moved to Vienna as a young man, dreaming of becoming an artist, but his hopes were dashed when the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts rejected him twice. It was a crushing blow, one that filled him with a deep sense of failure and resentment toward the world, particularly the multicultural society he saw in Vienna. Uncertain and lonely, Hitler spent these years in poverty, living in cheap lodging houses and occasionally working as a day laborer. During this period, he began forming many of the rigid, divisive ideas that would later shape his worldview, harboring a strong disdain for Jews, whom he irrationally blamed for his own misfortunes and Austria's struggles. In 1913, seeking a fresh start and drawn by his admiration for German culture, Hitler moved to Munich, Germany. Munich, a cultural and intellectual center, offered a new environment where he could escape the failures he faced in Vienna. Although born in Austria, Hitler increasingly identified with Germany, believing it to be the heart of the German-speaking world. He hoped that living in Germany would offer better prospects for his artistic ambitions, and he was also able to avoid military service in Austria by relocating to Munich. Then came 1914, and the outbreak of World War I. Hitler, like many young men of his generation, felt a surge of patriotism and purpose. He had always longed for a way to prove himself, to be part of something larger than his own life, and the war seemed to offer that. Although he wasn't a German citizen, having been born in Austria, he was a fervent believer in the German cause. Hitler deeply admired German culture, its language, and what he saw as the strength of its people. As a young man, he felt more connected to Germany than Austria, believing that Germany was the true heart of the German-speaking world and its political power. At the time, Hitler was living in Munich, Germany, where he had moved years earlier. When World War I broke out, despite not being a German citizen, he felt a strong desire to fight for Germany. The German military accepted foreign volunteers, and so, at the age of 25, Hitler volunteered to serve in the German army, joining the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment. The military became an escape for him, a place where his insecurities faded, and his sense of isolation transformed into a sense of belonging. In short, though born Austrian, Hitler's identification with German ideals and his belief in Germany as the heart of the German-speaking people led him to serve in the German army, dedicating himself to the nation he felt was his true homeland. In battle, Hitler proved himself unusually devoted. He served as a dispatch runner, a dangerous job that involved carrying messages across the front lines, often under heavy fire. While most soldiers counted down the days to leave the front, Hitler stayed by choice, even declining leave. He saw himself as a man on a mission, fueled by a newfound sense of purpose. He quickly gained a reputation for his bravery, earning to military decorations, including the Iron Cross, First Class, an honor rarely awarded to soldiers of his rank. His single-minded devotion, however, also made him something of an outcast. He wasn't close to his fellow soldiers, who found him distant, even odd. Unlike them, he rarely spoke of home or family, and seemed indifferent to the hardships of trench life. The trauma of defeat in 1918. After years on the front, Hitler's life would take a dramatic and irreversible turn. That October, during an attack near Ypres, a mustard gas explosion sent him to a military hospital, where he recovered from temporary blindness. For weeks, he lay in his hospital bed, surrounded by other wounded soldiers, clinging to the hope of victory, even as Germany's situation became increasingly desperate. For a Hitler, the idea of losing was unthinkable. The war had given him his first taste of purpose, of personal validation. He saw it as Germany's fight to redeem its place in the world, a crusade against what he believed were internal and external threats. But then, on a grey November morning, news arrived that shattered this dream. The Kaiser, Wilhelm II, the Emperor of Germany and King of Prussia, had abdicated. A republic had been declared, and the German leaders were preparing to surrender. Hitler lay motionless as the news sank in, his mind racing with shock and disbelief. He felt the weight of betrayal settle over him, as if everything he had fought for had been stolen by traitors back home. It was here that Hitler would embrace a dark belief that would become the foundation of his worldview, the stab-in-the-back myth. According to this idea, Germany hadn't been defeated by the Allies on the battlefield. Rather, he believed, the betrayal had come from within, from civilian leaders, leftist politicians, and, in Hitler's view, Jewish people whom he irrationally saw as corrupting German society. The reality was that Germany was militarily outmatched and exhausted. But for Hitler, and for many others who struggled to accept defeat, the myth offered a scapegoat. This belief would fuel his anger, his need for revenge, and his obsession with reshaping Germany's future. A dark decision. That day in the hospital, Hitler made a fateful decision. In the weeks that followed, as he lay in his hospital bed recovering, he resolved to dedicate his life to avenging Germany's defeat and to eradicating what he saw as the enemies of the German people. He believed he could restore Germany's honor and power, if only he could rid it of the so-called traitors he blamed for its humiliation. The once aimless artist was gone. In his place stood a man consumed by resentment, determined to rewrite Germany's future. This decision marked the beginning of Hitler's rise, as he transformed his anger and bitterness into a dark political vision.